Thank you very much for joining today. This is a webinar that discusses data is money and how to structure your hospital for profitability. And this obviously is going to be a meeting about data management, using business intelligence, and creating a data warehouse function, as well as delivering data through data model and dashboards to end users who can help steward your course towards profitability, as well as other areas like compliance. Of course, there's value-based purchasing, that's on everybody's mind as well, and the standard quality metrics such as length of stay and readmission. So this webinar is going to start off with an image, a picture of the industry, and essentially a drill down into the core fundamental aspects of building a successful BI installation and how to structure that for maximum hospital profitability. So again, my name is Brendan McCauley, and I'm the sales manager at FTI Catalyst, and I'll be joined today by Dan Gerana, who was our product manager and is responsible for the inception of this product and business model.
Can I ask, are the slides going to be made available after the webinar?
The slides can be made available after the webinar. Yes, they can.
Okay.
Okay. So right now, FTI Catalyst, right now we're seeing a physician, and he's interacting with data, and that's the vision that you all have in terms of your own hospital's infrastructure of how can you best get people to interact with data. Do you envision them using a tablet? Do you envision them using Excel spreadsheets? Do you envision them using a phone to easily look at outliers and data visualizations and drilling down? In this case, we have a physician who very well may be looking at productivity. Maybe he's a service line chief. Maybe he is a very productive orthopedic or cardiac surgeon, and he is looking at how he is stacked up against his peers for similar procedures, to see implant costs, to see DRGs, case mix. He is interacting with data proactively to understand his role in profitability and how his labor and supply choices affect the bottom line. The value equation that our industry has embraced for quite a while now has started discussing data analytics as being equal to dollars. And if hospitals are unable to produce the types of data analytics that are required in the next few years, there's clear consensus that they are going to suffer, because as such things as value-based purchasing come into play, improving on your existing scores is fundamental to reimbursement, not just reporting on the score. So competing with your peers against benchmarks which have been created to be high by some groups which may do a very good job of tracking data and improving results, those are the ones that we're really going to be competing with in the marketplace. And this is a comment by a CIO from the class Data Management Symposium talking about how data is important and data is dollars. And the value equation is really where we can at a high level sort of get the discussion and the wheels turning. And as we look at where we currently are and where value is derived from low cost and high quality, we realize we really want to be in this area. So we understand that value is equal to quality divided by cost. But other than some nifty algebra that ultimately becomes, what is the ultimate criteria for producing value? And value is being really talked about in a number of ways, whether you look at value-based purchasing or you look at your community and your own value efforts to lower prices maybe, to grow services in a shrinking market, to grow patient volumes. We'll help you today see how to structure your BI implementation to achieve a maximum value for your patients and your community, and also maximum profitability for your enterprise. And this is an international phenomenon. It's not just in the United States. This happens to be from Australia, where patients are happy to rate their private hospital as the best. And, you know, happy pictures of patients and staff is wonderful. We just wish CMS would accept such testaments of glee, because they won't. And that's where data is money. So the data that came, you know, the patient visits that satisfied these patients, their service, their clinical experiences, the fact that there was safety and patient satisfaction are all things that are intertwined in profitability. And, you know, the value equation at this point needs BI. And when class examined in their BI perception report in 2013. They examined hospitals that were currently trying to use BI, and they examined how successful they were, and they asked them what they needed. Well, a little more than half the group was pretty much on the same page when they decided that they needed data models and content knowledge. They wanted to be able to deliver service line managers information that was relevant to them, and they wanted to kickstart the implementation to include content and to include an existing data model. And ease of use and adaption, self-service visualization was also a very important aspect of what they were asking for in this particular report. And this trend that's worth highlighting about the value equation is really more highlighted by our industry executives who point to a significant issue in our business, which is most BI vendors are presenting the same problem over and over again, which is a tool set which is really just a blank piece of paper without any existing content and an existing data model. So this CIO is pointing out that the tools that are most helpful are the ones that come with the best practices for metrics and the analysis that are going to be most useful. So what we plan to show you today is not only structurally how to set up your technology and your systems to interact with one another in a way that allows you to see the core KPIs you're after, but also one that discusses content, not just structure. And when we examine KLAS, because they're a well-respected, as well as Gartner's perception of the marketplace, what we see is a little bit of the Wild West happening, and there's a lot of uncertainty in terms of who will be a leader in the BI marketplace. And when asked what vendor they expect to stand out as a market leader in enterprise analytics, there really wasn't a leader that anybody could really point to. And that leaves a lot of good opportunity if you're an Adam Smithian and you believe in capital markets and you believe in the best of the best. That leaves a lot of opportunity for companies to refine their technologies and deliver what the market is asking for. And when Gartner analyzed these vendors, like KLAS, they looked at multitudes of vendors under different types of scorecards. And they looked at challengers, leaders, what they call visionaries, and then niche players. The point of showing you this is that at the end of the day, they find a way to rank everybody, and they have something good and bad to say. But they do rank Tableau as being the top BI tool set on the market today. And what you'll see today is a data model and dashboards delivering content in a structurally sound BI installation using the Tableau tool set. And the types of things that we're looking to achieve down the road in creating a profitable hospital and by empowering end users to interact with data is to examine productivity, to look at nurse ratios, even including such things as by acuity, look at case margins, examining what types of variable costs are eroding case margins or driving case margins, what practices are driving case margins, and also trying to determine if there's a way to grow overall operating margins via capital recovery. So we'll look at those things, and then we'll also take a look at quality and, of course, finance. How can finance benefit from business intelligence in a way that helps them intervene on cost overruns? And also, how can we push finance out to the operational setting? For many, many years now, finance has been trying to understand the operational setting. And for years, operational managers have brought reports to finance about length of stay and readmissions and a host of other metrics. And finance would try to collate and put things together and make sense of it all. What we want to do is bring finance and operations together in a way that allows the service line managers and operational managers to see their choices and how they affect profitability. And empowering those managers and holding them accountable is what we hope you take away today as what is a very critical aspect of structuring BI for maximum profitability in your hospital. So it'll be an end-to-end solution, just looking at how we achieve profitability from a structural viewpoint. We look at source systems, we look at flat files, we look at your EMR systems, and we look at your source systems of record where key data elements sit. We pull those systems together into a data warehouse and insert a data model, and that allows you to then begin analyzing data in ad hoc fashion with our dashboards, and also puts you in a position to create custom dashboards in the future using a leading tool set. So how we construct this is we look at this as the 3 Ds of data delivery, and it's a data warehouse, whereas in source system identification and an ETL takes place. And then we create an install of our data model, which is already pre-existing. Our data model, the legwork has already been done, and Dan Gerena will talk about that exclusively when we get started, because he's the person who was involved in its inception, creation, and success. And then, of course, dashboards actually deliver the information siphoned out of the warehouse via the data model right to your desktop. So this is an important distinction because many times in our BI industry we see that the process stops here at the creation of a data warehouse. We take it another step forward. We're advocating taking a data model and dashboards right into the implementation phase as early as possible to achieve maximum success, usability, accountability, and to get the enterprise engaged. So what you'll see today is a balanced scorecard approach. This is an example of our content map, and you can see we'll be touching on all these different areas. And Dan Gerena, who I'd like to introduce next, who some of you may have met as well, because I know some of you have seen us in person already. Dan has 13 years of experience in a 5-hospital health system in New York, so I'd like to introduce him. He will take us through the demonstration today, and you can direct questions at any time directly towards Dan. So Dan, thank you very much for joining us today, and please go right ahead.
Thanks, Brendan. If you can keep your slides up, and I think there's a slide after this I'd like you to touch on that I want to speak to. But let me just give a little initial background on myself. I was the Director of Business Intelligence and Analytics at a 5-hospital healthcare system in Buffalo, New York for 13 years. So my day-to-day role was really meeting with stakeholders and understanding what metrics were important to them and how they approached those types of problems and what were the next layers that they needed to understand in order to identify strategies around changing the trajectory of those metrics and improving costs, operations, outcomes, etc. So that I'm essentially a data dork, and that's what I did all day, every day for 13 years before joining FTI. And so we everything from financial and operational and quality, staffing related, really everything that you need to have your finger on the pulse of in order to run a complicated organization like a healthcare or a hospital organization with clinics and emergency departments and OR suites, etc. I mean, we focused on all of that. So, Brendan, if you could advance it one more slide. I'm guessing here from memory where it's going to be, but I just want to explain. No, one more after that. And one more. Do we have a slide in there that shows a data model, or is that not in this one? I can't remember.
No, it's not in this one.
Okay, so let me speak to it. So what Brendan already touched on was when you go out and you look at BI tool sets, think in terms of if you were going to buy a car, right? Imagine if you bought a car and it didn't have an engine, and you had to build the engine yourself. I mean, that's effectively what is happening in the marketplace with business intelligence tool sets. You're buying a tool set, but there's nothing to point it to. You have to figure out what the metrics are. You have to build those data models up and essentially establish something to report on. So the easy part actually is to select the tool set. The hard part is the implementation. And the implementation requires that you understand what your folks need to look at and analyze. And it's a very iterative process. For the good part of 13 years, I go back and forth with stakeholders and say, okay, I think this is what you asked for. They say yes. They start using it, and then they say, but can I see it this way? Can I also see this? I also have a need to do this. And so the data model that we built in Catalyst has been refined over the course of that 13-year period. All of those conversations back and forth of how they want to see things and why and the enhancements to it. So you don't have to start from scratch. That's the intent, is if you're going to invest in a BI tool set, you want to get a return on investment as quickly as possible. If you take the approach of building one subject area at a time, it will take you 13 years, and it will be a very slow adoption rate because you're only going to solve one small problem at a time and refine it from there. So if you could turn the screen over to me. I will show you our solution. So really what we're talking about is a best-in-breed business intelligence tool set sitting on top of a refined data model, right? That's the differentiator here, right? I myself, Brendan, the folks that I have worked with me at FTI, we know healthcare. We understand healthcare. A lot of times you'll have BI folks come in and they'll show you a database about bicycles and they'll try to sell you their tool set. That's not very helpful. So really what we're talking about is the ability to have a balanced scorecard approach and to implement that successfully, okay? And so this is designed specifically around healthcare. And so I'll show you a couple of examples. This is an example of one of our financial dashboards. This focuses on profitability. And this will allow me to give you an idea of the look and feel and how the tool set works and the functionality in the context of the dashboards. So this is, here I have a scatter plot, and each individual data point is a different patient. You can see if I mouse over the data points, I can see who the physician was, who the patient was, what the procedure was, or the DRG in this case, and the profitability. So a couple of things going on here. I have color, right? Red means I lost money on the case. Green means I made money. The darker the green, the more I made. The deeper the red, the more I lost, right? So I know that visually from a 50,000-foot perspective. At the top of the screen, I have a number of filters that allow whoever decides to use this dashboard to look at just the slice of the world they care about. So a lot of folks need access to length of stay, readmissions, etc., but based on their role in the organization, they attack it from a different angle. So we don't want to have 30 dashboards around profitability. We want one dashboard on profitability, and we want the users to be able to say, this is how I want to see it. So I can see specific date ranges. I can see if I have multiple hospitals, and I can, let's say I'm chief of surgery for orthopedic surgery, so I can pick and choose specific slices of the data. So right now my default is orthopedic surgical product line, so I see all the individual patients for whatever date range I specified that have an orthopedic surgical DRG, right? So that's the cohort I'm looking at here. You'll also notice, aside from color, I have shape. I have circles, triangles, X's, asterisks, etc. Okay? The shapes represent, in this case, financial class. So I could come over to my legend here and I can just pick Medicaid, and I can see that the majority of my orthopedic surgical patients in this time frame were profitable. I had one patient where I lost money, right? So everything sort of fades to the background, and whatever I select here pops. Right? So I've very quickly gone from a 50,000-foot view to the ability to see just a subset of that population, the orthopedic surgical patients, to very quickly just seeing a layer of that by stratifying it by financial class, and now I just see the Medicaid orthopedic surgical patients are pretty profitable in general. Medicare is a bit of a mixed bag, etc. Right? So your users are coming in here, and all they're doing is clicking. Right? They don't have to understand SQL code. They don't have to export this and do further manipulation. We've designed this with the intent of the flow of how people will actually think of the data and analyze it, right? So start at the 50,000-foot view. What are those next set of questions they're going to ask? But we want it to be flexible such that we can answer the question for different stakeholders. So here I have the financial class as the shape, but let's say I instead have a user who wants to see specific DRGs, right? So they can toggle it to the APR DRG, for instance, and that becomes the shape. So now if I wanted to see all my DRG 304, right, I can see those pop and everything else fade to the background. So there's essentially unlimited flexibility, right? We can add whatever fields we want to this drop-down. So even though this dashboard is pre-built, it's not predefined in terms of having a constraint on your end. Once you implement this dashboard, you can add gender here if I wanted to. I can add patient zip code. I can add whatever I want. And that's the part that historically has been heavy lifting, because as you define a data model from scratch, you may not realize, hey, I should probably include race. I should probably include gender. I should probably include referring physician. we've already crossed that bridge. We've defined those parameters, and we're embedding that capability into the tool set because it's sitting on that robust data model. So this is an example of the flexibility of the tool set itself. So this is the 50,000 foot view. Here's a 10,000 foot view by individual DRG. So I can see I have 1,291 data points for DRG 302. That's my most popular one. I can see what the profitability on that is per case, about $2,800. And then I can even get down to the street level from 50,000 foot view, and I can say, for instance, who are these outliers, right? That may be the intent here. So I can draw a little lasso around these two data points, and I can see the individual patients and who they are and information about them. So the tool set and dashboard are structured such that you can interact with the information right on the fly and understand what you're looking at with the ability to sort of turn it on its side very quickly, and interacting with it lets you drill down further and understand outliers in this case, right? So I'm not necessarily concerned about the cluster in the middle. I really want to understand who these outliers are and who the physicians were on those cases and what the extent of the circumstances around those particular patients were. So I can mouse over it, or I can select it, and I can see further detail on that. So that's a lot of information, obviously, in one long run-on sentence. So it's a balanced scorecard approach. What we just saw is just one dashboard, right? There's a whole host of dashboards, obviously. And what I'll do is just for demonstration purposes, I'll just jump to a couple of them. But there's so much content, obviously, we're not going to cover it all. So if there's anything specific anyone wants to see, let me know. But here's an example of our readmission dashboard. And we look at 30-day readmissions. And one of the things we try to do here is understand within that 30-day window, when are patients coming back? So for all, if you consider a readmit a defect, when are those patients coming back? I can see 20 patients came back. Again, I'm looking at orthopedic surgical patients for whatever date range. I can see that 20 of them came back on day 6 after they were discharged, right? So my strategy is really going to be different for patients that come back in the first couple of days than patients that come back, on day 20 and 21, right? Maybe day 20 and 21, the root cause is really around, they're not taking their prescriptions appropriately, whatever the case may be. And on day 1 and 2, maybe it's the disposition of the patient. Maybe we should have discharged them home with services. Maybe there's no one home to take care of them and help them remember to take their medication or change the bandages, right? So readmissions on its own is world hunger. You have to somehow present the data in a manner in which you can slice it and dice it and understand root causes and then change processes and protocols so you can change the trajectory of that metric. And that's really how we're designing all of our dashboards, is not just saying, here's how you did, but trying to give insight in terms of what the drivers are. So again, I have, as my field selector, I have DRG here. So I can see the individual DRGs, and I can see which ones have a higher readmission rate than the others. So surprisingly, my foot and toe procedures have a really high readmit rate of about 20%. So I can, quickly understand certain subsets of the population, but I can look at it by surgeon, for instance, right? So I can look at the surgeons and see which ones, how they compare to each other. So I quickly have a cohort of orthopedic surgeons, and I can measure them against each other and understand who's got higher readmit rates than their cohort and their peers. So that's the beauty of this dual approach of having a pre-built dashboard sitting on underneath a best-in-breed tool set. We've designed the dashboards using visual best practices, so you have the ability to understand what the data is telling you, but further the ability to understand what actions to take in order to change those results, and thus this dashboard then becomes a mechanism by which you track progress to say, okay, we changed these policies on 9 North because if I were to look at this by nursing unit, 9 North had a high readmit rate. So we changed certain practices on 9 North in terms of the discharge instructions. Are they doing better now, right? That sort of thing. So that's sort of the ultimate objective of this is not just to spit out what the numbers are. Anyone can crank and tell you your readmit rate is 2.3%. But what is it for a specific product line and why? What are the drivers of that? You know, how do we understand why this particular doctor has a higher readmit rate? Well, now I can drill down on Dr. Shea, and I can see the individual patients under that physician, and I've got a whole host. I've tapped into the data model now. I can see a whole host of information around that patient: age, gender, did they come through the ED, what insurance they have, what their respective length of stay was, right? So a whole world of further analysis can be done based on that. So this is really a gateway to understanding what your metrics are telling you, and really, you know, if you think in terms of a balanced scorecard approach, right? Investments in business intelligence tools are expensive things, right? And imagine you're not getting a data model, right? So you're not going to get a return on your investment for a long time. And further, you know, the adoption rate is going to be not the same way you want it to be, where, you know, people are still going to keep their shadow databases and their spreadsheets and manually do things. And so the objective here is the big bang approach of, okay, how do we roll out a balanced scorecard approach that gives financial, operational, quality, staffing, you know, productivity focus, so everyone can embrace this new culture of a data-driven organization, as opposed to doing it slowly and in a piecemeal fashion. And so you want to get a return on investment as quickly as possible. And if you think in terms of even though, you know, BI tool sets and are expensive undertakings, generally speaking, especially if they fail and nobody adopts them, if you were to just solve your problems around readmissions or around profitability or length of stay or patient complications, that return on investment pays for the tool itself. So imagine you're getting a balanced scorecard approach where you can fire on all cylinders and address all of those concerns. You know, that ultimately is the holy grail of business intelligence, right? A balanced scorecard approach where you can, you know, leverage all of your information across all of your stakeholders. So we've recently built a suite of productivity dashboards, and the focus of that is really to understand where there are opportunities, where we're overstaffed or understaffed at the nursing unit level, right? So what our data model does is it captures patient census from your ADT systems 6 times a day. So midnight, 4 a.m., 8 a.m., noon, 4 p.m., 8 p.m. We also capture from your time and attendance system the staffing level on each of those nursing units. So I know, for instance, on 9 North there were 22 patients at noon, and I had 2 RNs and 1 LPN clocked in, or whatever the case may be, right? So knowing that allows me to, when I have that in an integrated data model under the hood, allows me to compute what the actual ratio of caregivers to patients was, and I can then further compare that to what my target is, right? So the target may be different on an orthopedic nursing unit than a critical care nursing unit, et cetera. So this particular dashboard takes a look at how over time I'm performing on this. I've got 1 nursing unit, for instance, so I can see for that 1 nursing unit when I'm above or below my target, you know, by day of month. So here are the calendar days, right? So I can see, you know, in December on this day I had a really good day, and then I had a really bad day on this day in December, that sort of thing. But I could further, as I mentioned, we're capturing 6 points throughout the day. If I just want to understand, for instance, at 8 a.m. what's going on, right, I can apply that filter and just look at the 8 a.m.s, right? So now I have 365 data points here looking at 8 a.m.s for this particular nursing unit, for instance. So that's sort of, this particular view allows me to see over time how I'm faring, and I can see a lot of this stuff is cyclical, right? It's going up and down, very volatile. So that tells me that there's opportunities there to improve things. Further, I can look at, from a productivity perspective, I can see what we have in terms of variances. So I'm just going to compute the variance between positive and negative, so overstaffed versus understaffed. And I can see, you know, this is a calendar view of it. So I can see at the 8 a.m. point for a particular nursing unit, I can see, when they had, in sort of a heat map kind of view, when they have positive or unfavorable variances, when they were over or understaffed, if you will. And I can see that in a cumulative sort of variance. So they had a big problem here in the beginning of the month, and then they evened things out, that sort of thing. So the intent really is to understand, when I have issues with staffing and to address those, but we can further go down to the individual timestamp level. So for any department, I can click a particular timestamp, and I can see, red is I was overstaffed, for instance. I can see, who I had clocked in. So I can see the individual employees that were clocked in, and I can, understand what the number of patients were at that point and what my target was. And as we have a unified data model under the hood, I know what each of these employees makes per hour, so I can even compute a cost for that 4-hour window. Because I have their hourly wage rate, I can determine, what the financial impact is of just this one data point on the organization if I assume the same behavior for that 4-hour window. So that's an example of understanding where you're over and understaffed by day of week, by hour of day. A lot of granularity there, but what we try to do is present at the 50,000-foot view and allow you to sort of peel the onion and identify what the outliers are, what the trends are, and what's driving those. So that was one part of the question. The other question, I think, was around the data model. The data model and the dashboards are all changeable. If you have a particular dashboard, you can take it and go in any direction you want. You don't have to present the data in the way we, by default, show it. This tool set is very flexible in terms of, if I wanted to add additional fields, if it was important to me to know certain things, like what shift they typically work on or anything like that. This is a drag and drop tool set, right? So it's, very easy to change how things are displayed in terms of, whether you want to show a table or a bar chart or whatever the case may be. You have full control over all of those aspects of the visualization. We just have a default view by which we built it. You can further build brand new dashboards, right? You can take data from this dashboard and that dashboard and show it this way in order to tell a totally different story than you're showing here. So we come to you with a data model. The data model is also flexible. If you have a bariatric center of excellence and we don't have a placeholder for BMI, you can add that to the data model. If you want to bring in data from other data sources, let's say you do Press Ganey, and you want to understand, you want to link Press Ganey data to the existing data model, as long as you have a linkage like patient ID, for instance, you can link that, and you can then have a scatter plot that shows profitability versus patient satisfaction for a particular doctor, right? So the data model itself is totally customizable and flexible, as is the dashboards that are pre-built. You can go in any direction you want. So there's a lot of content here. Obviously, the intent of today is really, as we're running out of time, is just to give you sort of a flavor of the dashboards in terms of the content, as well as in terms of the functionality. It's a best-in-breed tool set sitting on top of a pre-built data model. And so that effectively is what Catalyst is. Okay, so I'll turn it back to you, Brendan.
Excellent. Okay, so this meeting today is about, of course, structuring BI to deliver content which end users can interact with to make business decisions and steward profitability. So what we saw today, in just that one last example of productivity, in that one example, we see a way in which we could turn the dial on labor usage. And as Dan discussed, the interactivity with the data model and dashboards, we also have dashboards, for example, for case mix and case mix acuity. So I had one person recently ask me at HFMA this past week, can you include acuity in your productivity module? And the answer would be yes. It would have to be, a rework a little bit, but the answer there would be yes. We could look at productivity and include levels of acuity so that when labor care roles are reassigned, we can assign them to the place where they're most needed. We also have an ED area where you can also in real time examine ED throughput and take a look at where staff are allocated. So the data model is robust. So I just want to make sure we're closing on stream here in terms of what our theme was today and structuring BI for maximum profitability. In a nutshell, begins with the 3 Ds of data delivery. And that again is the data warehouse, a system of truth to bring all of your attributes together under one roof where they're normalized, calibrated, and validated, and then to deliver those data through a data model to dashboards from which end users can easily interact with and spot the types of trends that need to be stopped or affirmed.